Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Natasha. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. And if you're returning, thank you for coming back. This video is going to share with you how we built our seedling cabinet, where we start our seeds every year before we transplant them out into the garden. Now before we get into this video, I'll leave some chapter headings down below if maybe there's a specific part of this video that you want to skip to, if you're just here about the lights or you're just here about the seedling cabinet setup. I will leave those headings down below so you can skip to whatever section you're here for if you're not interested in all of this video. That way you can get right what you need and get on with your seedling cabinet. We're very fortunate. We live in an area where we do have long enough summers to grow a lot of food outside. In fact, much more than most, but we don't have a long enough season for some of those crops that just take a little bit longer in the summer, like tomatoes and peppers and watermelons, to really come to full maturity. And so it is best for us to start some of those plants indoors so that we can bank on having a harvest at the end of the year. And the way that we do that is we start our seeds indoors a couple of weeks ahead of the last frost. That way our plants can start to germinate and grow into little tiny plants, sometimes medium to large plants. And that way, when they're ready to be transplanted into the garden, they've already done a lot of the growing time inside and just can proceed the rest of the summer in roughly ideal conditions out there and give us a harvest at the end of the year. So very worthwhile for us to do, and I think a lot of people are in the same place if you don't live in hotter temperatures. There's just some things that we can't grow for a lot of time. And so gardeners like me look for other ways where we can extend our season somehow. Now normally a seedling cabinet is some kind of shelving unit where you can stack lights on different shelves, and then you would have a seedling tray at the bottom right directly below the lights, which can then kind of act as the sun for those seeds to germinate and start to grow. Now when we started gardening a little bit more seriously, we just did not have the room to put up a kind of shelving unit other than what we already had in the house. And even now where we still live, that is just not a reality for us. We do not have a room where we can just set up a unit like this. So instead we looked at what we had in the house and thought, how could we make this kind of setup work? And then the idea came that we would use this old dresser slash bookshelf slash something. It's been many different kind of useful things in its life already. But we thought this would be a great thing to use because it's already got the shelves that you normally would need from some kind of shelving unit. So we could layer a couple of seed trays in there, and it does have the base where you could attach the lights. And so my husband, who's an electrician, thought up this design where we would transfer each shelving unit as the base for holding the lights, and then we could fit at least 8 trays in this shelving unit. Now we removed the doors of this dresser a little while ago when we needed some storage in a closet, and so the doors have long been gone, so this made the install a little bit easier because you could just work directly in there. Okay, now this is a bit beyond my skill set, and so I had my husband draw this out for you on a whiteboard to explain to me what all is going on here, how did he design this, what is the tools that he used and materials. And so I'm going to leave a list for you down below if you're interested in building something similar to this. But I'm going to do my best to explain to you what he has explained to me. And it seems quite simple, but again, I'd probably be doing it in layman's terms and I may get some things wrong. So this is just an idea, and I would hope that if you're going to embark in something like this that you have some kind of skill a bit more than me, but that this idea would just be a starting point for you to go and do more research. But what I can tell you is that this seedling cabinet has some lights, it's got a bathroom fan that is extracting some air to keep the air movement flowing, it's got some pipes for ventilation on each shelf, and then we've also put in a timer so that it can go on and off at certain times of the day, and laced the inside with some tin foil so that we have light all over, and the seed trays on the edges would get the same amount of light, or roughly the same amount of light as things that are right directly underneath the lights. Now before I get into telling you the actual process, you would think, well, wouldn't all the light just shine right out of the cabinet? And you're right, it does. And so what we did to combat that is use an emergency blanket which has a reflective side, and we would just tape it to the front of the cabinet to keep all of the light in that way. This year we're going to make some improvements and actually add some doors, which I think will just be a better way to kind of house in the lighting and not look so odd in our living room. But you could cover it up in whatever kind of way if you have a bookshelf that you're using. Yeah, think about some kind of doors, or again, like I was saying, we were just hanging an emergency blanket or some kind of reflective material, or even just a cover to keep the light inside, which you can then also layer with tin foil, as we'll do with the doors that we put up this year. Now I'll put the drawing for you as I speak here. From what I understand, the seed cabinet is 4 feet long, and the lights that we purchased were 2 feet long. The lights are installed in the middle of each shelf. My husband used a BX armed cable to ensure that there would be no mechanical damage and that the wires would be well protected in this unit. And so it runs all the way from the bottom to the top, and then each light is added to the other so that it runs in a circuit, from what I understand. And then each side of the shelf has a hole in it, which is then connected to a pipe which will extract air from the shelving unit and blow it out through the extractor fan down our hallway. Now I believe he said this is some 3-inch piping, and so you would have to think how big your holes are, buy similar piping that would fit that setup. And this piping runs directly into a bathroom fan. He told me it's a 50 CFM fan, and that it would be good for you to think about buying a fan that is at the base the same size as the piping unit that would come into it. So think about the two sides, the piping and the fan, when you are purchasing materials. For us, this just worked out that the piping fit directly into the fan. And if you've got a tricky situation, you could get some kind of pipe connector that could change it from a certain size to the right size of the fan, or whatever you gotta do. But you may as well, if you're gonna buy the materials on the outset, think about the size of the pipe that will go and feed directly into the fan so that those two match or have a way of matching in the end. And then the wire to make the fan run is then run all the way down. It has its own plug to whereby the plug for all the lights are. Now when you're installing lights, it may be helpful to put in some kind of insulation between the lights and the actual cabinet. Yeah, just so there's some protection there against heating. So something like drywall or something similar to that that could absorb that heat that would be coming off of the light directly onto the shelf. And then once that all got set up, our lights were plugged into a timer so that that can run on a certain circuit, and we can decide when this will go on and when it will shut off. It's a very simple seedling cabinet built with lights and a bathroom fan so that we can have some healthy seedlings grow in this cabinet. Now if money is not an issue, of course you could put double lights in this cabinet. They're only 2 foot wide, and if your cabinet is 4 feet wide, you could fit 2 lights side by side, but that will be double the cost for the lights. And so if you can do that, go for it. We thought, well, if we just lace the inside with aluminum foil, that'll give enough light off where it's not a big issue. And I usually turn the seedling trays every week or so, or however, if I can see that the seedlings are starting to lean a little bit more towards the light. So it's not been a major issue to the point where I wish that I had put 2 lights side by side, but of course you could do that if you want. And then cover the front of the seedling cabinet with some kind of sheet or emergency blanket that has a reflective side, or if you're going to do like we're doing this here, add some doors on hinges that will also be laced with tinfoil on the inside to hold all of that reflective light on the inside. And this is a very simple seedling cabinet, and it works really well. I think the thing that makes the seedling cabinet amazing is the extractor fan. You'll notice that if you start some seeds in some of those greenhouses that they sell commercially, even the little ones, if there's not enough air movement coming through there, the chances of those seedlings molding is huge. And so a fan is absolutely necessary to have healthy seedlings, in my opinion, to have that constant air flow very lightly, not a massive fan blowing the seedlings over, but just moving this stagnant air so that it's not sitting there and making moldy soil or moldy plants, but just actually an environment where the air is moving. So I think the fan is the winner of this, and I'm so thankful to my husband who thought about this. I would not even have thought to include an extractor fan to keep the air moving. But this has worked really well for us, and so I can advocate it to you if you're interested in how to make a DIY seedling growing setup. This is a wonderful idea, and it can be made just out of a bookshelf. Now I'll add a note in here about the lights. Your lights that you buy don't have to be super professional lights. I know there are lots of lights out there. They can be very expensive depending on what you buy, and of course there are some that are better than others, and it is a big question that I had when we were buying lights: which lights do you buy? Now I'm so glad that I found out that all that really matters is the Kelvin number and the lumens number. So for the light that you're thinking about buying, go and find out what the numbers for those 2 lights are. And if you find a light that doesn't have the numbers, I would say don't take a risk with it. Find a light setup that tells you the lumens and the Kelvin numbers, and there's a certain amount that you need for plants to grow to mimic light. The higher the numbers are, the more sunlight it mimics, and so on. But there's just a standard that you need that is just the basic and has worked perfectly. I don't remember what those numbers are right now off the top of my head, but I will put them down in the link below so that you can go check out specific numbers that you actually need to be able to grow healthy seedlings. I think that's all you need to know, and then you can go buy a lighting setup. And this was not that expensive because we didn't go buy the most professional lights, we just bought enough for the Kelvin and the lumen numbers to actually mimic sunlight and grow some healthy seedlings for us.